So I've been meaning to do this for a while, but we're going to talk about threat prioritization and ways that you can keep priority in Marvel Crisis Protocol. It's going to be kind of a tier list video, but a tier list video in a different way, in that the people at the top are the folks that you kind of want to deal with as soon as possible. Um, but also, it's an interesting conversation because this game has the dazing mechanic, and when you hit someone, they get power, unless they're Dormammu. So the characters you want to daze, hitting them often juices them up and lets them do all their scary stuff. So to get this one out of the way, because I know it's a pretty big question in a lot of people's minds, yeah, Dr. Voodoo and Black Cat are pretty good. And unless you can confirm that you're going to kill them, you probably shouldn't attack them. Like, if you can one-round them, by all means do it. If you can't one-round them, you're basically just giving them the power to be much more annoying. So we'll leave that one right there. So, like, when I say threat prioritization, getting these characters off the table is great. That doesn't mean you should just be dumping activations into them. One-rounding is obviously not something that everyone can do all the time. But this is also, like, if you're not attacking them, if you can control them, if you don't attack Voodoo or Cat for a long time and you're just forcing them to deal with the power that they can generate by themselves, their impact can be very limited. If, like, Dr. Voodoo is double moving every turn, he's not very happy. If Black Cat, is only getting to steal once per game, that's a 3-threat character for a 1 VP swing. It's not that big a deal. But yeah, going from there, I think... So we'll put them down here. And this is going to be horribly organized in advance, just so you know. But characters that when I see them on the table, even at the risk of giving them power, I just want them gone. I'm going to start off with Domino, because she's been the bane of my existence recently. But Domino, X-23, Badger... are all really cheap and really powerful 3-threat characters that can do a lot of damage and are surprisingly hard to kill sometimes. Baron Zemo is another interesting one. I'm going to move Black Cat and Zemo down a peg too. Or Black Cat and Dr. Voodoo, because they're kind of doing something different than what I'm talking about here. Baron Zemo is also... he actually probably does belong up here. He's not quite as annoying to tank down as the other two, so we'll put him a little further away. But he is still, like... He's a force multiplier in the same way that Thanos is. And speaking of Thanos, Thanos definitely belongs up here. He is such a centerpiece to teams, which is that's how he should be, because he's 8th threat most of the time, or 6th threat minimum. But Thanos you have to approach pretty differently than any other character in the game, because if you daze his friends, they get stronger. So even though his friends are murder machines most of the time, the best way to deal with Thanos is to daze and KO him as quickly as possible. If you can't KO him, it's not the end of the world, but dazing him is really important. It takes away all of his control. And Thanos, on his flip side, as we'll bring up here, is basically just a beater. He can't really spend power too well besides using his Cosmic Blast, which is a decent attack, don't get me wrong. But like his only control would possibly come from the gems. Most of the time you see something like Space and Mind. I'm really a big fan of Mind and Power these days. But either way, he's not super happy when he's flipped. He loses his Cosmic Portal. It's a pretty big deal. He is a big, tanky man who can punch really hard and shoot lasers, which is a good way to close out a game. But Thanos on his flip side, if you've gotten that far, you're probably making that Thanos player not feel super happy. So he definitely, like, if you're fighting against Black Order, the first thing you should be trying to do is take down Thanos. Because if you take down Corvus or Proxima, they're going to have priority, and they're going to hit you for 9-die attacks, and that's when things start to get really crazy, and you start getting blown off the board. So... in much fewer words than I just said, if you can kill Thanos, kill Thanos. If you can kill any of these three, please kill any of these three. X-23 and Badger have exceptional healing, which is really problematic, but the sooner you get them to burn that card, the better. Because if it gets to like turn 4 or 5 and you're still trying to fight these people, or like Wolverine or something as well, and they still have exceptional healing, you're probably not going to win that game. Because you're looking for 2 spikes all of a sudden instead of just 1. Moving on from there, what are other really annoying characters in the A's? Not really.
What about Juggernaut?
Juggernaut's an interesting thing. I'm going to put Juggernaut... Okay, so we'll put these two back up here. We're going to put Juggernaut down here. This is going to be the really annoying if they have an extract, otherwise there's no point in attacking them. So Juggernaut, right. Toad, Black Panther... most of the spiders, honestly, so like Amazing for sure, Miles. Maybe I'm not gonna put Gwen there. I think Gwen's a little bit of a different situation, but Juggernaut, Toad, Black Panther, Amazing Spider-Man, Miles Morales. These characters, they're the things on their cards besides kinda Panther because he's also an offensive powerhouse. The things on their cards that are really stand out is their defensive abilities. So they're if you're just like poking away at these guys, that's kind of what they want. There's not really a huge point to trying to deal damage to these guys if they're not doing anything at the board state. Like, I can't really think of a less impactful activation than having like a Bullseye or Moon Knight or one of these lower threat kind of like pew pew characters attacking one of these guys because in situation A, which is the most likely, you probably just deal no damage, and in situation and you give them power, like I was talking about before. In situation B, if you magically daze them, you probably just lost yourself priority, and they're gonna come back and hit you harder. Dazing Juggernaut obviously gets rid of his like helmet, and that's a pretty big deal. But Juggernaut isn't that. He's really tanky. I'm gonna pick him up. I made that decision today that I'm actually gonna buy this character. He's really tanky. He runs really
Right.
fast, and he's a great extract runner. But he's also really easy to ignore if he doesn't have an extract. So, if Juggernaut isn't like, if he's not proving himself to be worth that 5 threat, like if you're playing on a research station or something, and he's not like, you know, put somehow magically pushing 2 people off with his 5-die builder every round, you can pretty safely ignore him and just kill everyone around him because Juggernaut is very similar to like Hulk or Thanos, where like they're very bulky, but they are not going to win a game on their own. Um, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that because we saw a game this morning between Morgan Reed and Xavier Protocols, or Jacob from Xavier Protocols, where Juggernaut did literally win a game by himself. But that's legacy. Legacy shouldn't count for anything. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, yeah, these are like the tier of guys that you probably just shouldn't attack unless they force you to. You never want to give. Oh, actually, I guess so. All right, we need to draw more lines.
Uh-oh. There we go.
So we're gonna draw a line right here. This is this row or whatever is gonna be the don't attack them, but for different reasons. So Black Cat and Voodoo you don't want to attack because you just don't want to give them power. These other guys here you don't want to attack. I guess Toad is I don't know. Toad's a different kind of conversation, but like you don't want to attack any of these guys if you can help it because they're just so tanky. It's probably not gonna matter. And then also this combined with you don't want to attack these guys unless they have an extract because there's no real point. Like
Okay, fair enough.
yeah, Voodoo's strength comes from like he's a great beater. He actually does a pretty ridiculous amount of damage. Even his builder is pretty nasty, just because it's a range 3 5-die Mystic attack that can sap and he gets skulls and blah 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 blah. But Mystic is not super like there are more characters now who can deal with it, but it's still probably the weakest defense overall because Martial Artist doesn't work for it, Vibranium Artist doesn't work for it. I'm saying this because I'm an Avengers player, but I have a lot of characters don't have that Mystic weakness or Mystic strength. I mean, I guess like Juggernaut does, and like the reduced by 1 characters do, but they are. I can't say few and far between because everyone plays them now because they're really good. But yeah, if you can ignore Voodoo, ignore Voodoo. Like
Oh,
it's his job to force you to pay attention to him. Is how I would describe it.
right. You forgot one person.
Who'd I forget?
On the top, I think.
Baron Zemo, Domino.
No. Iron Fist. Sorry, Iron Fist.
No, that's actually a good point.
Yeah. Iron Fist. Yeah.
Where do we want to put Iron Fist? Iron Fist is probably over here as well.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, no, he's probably in the middle actually, because he's both. Iron
Well,
Fist and Luke Cage are interesting. They might have
yeah,
to have their
'cause-
own little line. Let's draw another line, just for the
Okay.
2 of them.
Just because, I mean, if you're gonna bring Iron Fist or Luke Cage, Heroes for Hire is coming, right? So
Yes, it's one of the best cards in the game. It's a very very impactful card. I'm a huge fan of Luke Cage, as anyone who's played with me will tell you. They're interesting because yeah, you don't want to attack them, but Luke Cage will literally force you to attack them all the time. And if you have Mystic attacks, you can attack Iron Fist, but then you're basically just giving him power, and he gets closer and closer to that big 8-die attack or 9-die 8 power attack where he just activates one of your characters and takes him off the board basically. So I would say the Heroes for Hire, more so Iron Fist than Luke Cage, are an interesting mix of these 2 groups. They are both very tanky, and you don't want to give them power. More so Iron Fist than Luke Cage, but they also like are like Black Cat and Voodoo, where they are going to have an impact, and there's not much you can do about that. It's just the nature of the characters, unless you're playing like super tall and you have Scarlet Witch and you just nuke Iron Fist off the board. That's one way you could deal with them.
Okay.
What other group should we talk about? I haven't talked about Domino specifically, but Domino is probably like mathematically the best 3 threat for pure damage. Just because she has, if she has any sort of power, her rapid fire becomes this like ridiculous, you know, reality gem Corvus esque attack, and her things tend to go my way. Her passive is, I think, critically underrated. Being unable to spike Domino makes her way tankier than she should be. It's really hard
Definitely.
to like functionally put Domino down sometimes.
Unless the person's rolling bad for Domino. I hear
Well,
you. Yeah.
anyone in this game can get blown up, right? But the thing is,
Yeah.
like, whereas you can, like, if your Lizard is another very tanky character, right? But the other day, I rolled 3 crits with Doctor Voodoo turn 1 and just nuked Lizard off the board. That doesn't happen with Domino. It's literally impossible. You cannot crit her. So she doesn't just get spiked out of existence sometimes. You're going to have to probably put at least 2 attacks, or make 2 attacks and a throw or something like that into her. Unless you're, just rolling super hot and just rolling hot, period. Or if you have rerolls like Mr. Zemo provides. So that's why she's up there with the Murder Sisters. Let's find some other groups to talk about.
The Murder Sisters like that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, the Murder Clones, something like that, right? Let's see. Obviously, like, I'm gonna put some generics here. So, like, leaders are very important to take down, right? Just because these
Hmm.
three are right here. Removing leaderships off the table is a big deal. Sam obviously has a very strong leadership. Getting rid of that takes away a lot of his team's both offensive and defensive pressure. It makes him a lot weaker overall. So if the Sam player puts him in a position where you can take him out, it's probably a good idea to try and do so. Sam also like tends not to expose himself when he's the leader because he really like is very happy just camping a back point and like charging in, throwing a shield, and then moving back every turn.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he's, if you get the chance to put him down, put him down. But like, don't. I see a lot of people do this like sometimes with Sam is they'll hyper focus on him because they think his leadership is gonna like win the game. Period. If you have any kind of control in your list, in your deck or whatever, just play your control against Sam spam, because they're really not super great into it. Because Sam spam, it's a term I hate to even like use. It's kind of like, it sounds derogatory, and Sam is not like any more ridiculous than any other leader in my opinion. I think he's really good, and he's really good into attrition for sure. But like every list in this game, it has bad matchups. Like if you have a Sam list going into like, hardcore web warriors, it's pretty on you to win that game. And when I say hardcore web warriors, I mean like a Miles control list where they're just gonna run around and try and outscore you.
Right. Okay.
Um,
It's interesting that you put Steve Steve there for
oh,
Captain
I
America.
just grabbed 3 leaders because they were all right next to each other.
Okay. Because
But yeah,
I know
Steve's
some
leadership is
people.
pretty like non-impactful later on, but he's gonna force you to attack him.
But you almost don't want to. I mean, it's hard not to because obviously he's bodyguarding.
Yeah,
But
that's what
he's
I mean.
probably
He forces you
yeah
to attack him.
yeah
Ooh, another character. He's not the most popular, but if you're playing against Dormammu, the best thing you can do is kill Dormammu. It's not an easy thing to do because his excellent reactive ability, Feel the Power of Darkness, where he
yep,
pushes you away, so it's very hard to double tap him.
and hex you.
Yep, and Hex. There are certain characters who are exceptionally good at it, like Mystique or Winter Soldier. But if you're fighting against Dormammu, obviously the most impactful thing you can do is take the 8 threat character off the table. I find that if you can kill Dorm like semi quickly, like by round 3, there's very little your opponent can do to bring it back. So we're gonna put Corvus over here. Reality Corvus is what we're talking about. I'm gonna try and
Yeah.
find some others who are comparable. Um, Probably Scarlet Witch. Who else is kind of in that same realm? Debatably Supreme Strange, although I haven't seen him played or played with him enough to really say that. But
I mean, I played him several times. I mean, he's always good to take an opponent's gunner down. I guess you want to call it because Strange is out there not also for control, but also for damaging, right? So
mhm.
um, I guess he could go there. Yeah.
Hood's gonna float around here for a second. I do want to talk about Hood. Um, Kingpin's an important leader to have in that bracket. If you can kill Kingpin, it's a huge deal. But he's obviously very tanky, so it's hard to do.
Yeah, Kingpin is definitely
I want to talk
has an
about,
XP kit on his
yeah,
back.
we'll put Hood, we'll put Loki. Both annoying characters. Magneto is a leader. I'm just putting characters who are like very impactful leaders in that spot.
Hmm.
Um, MODOK's another big, 5 threat monster.
What do you do with Iron Man?
Which one?
Core box Iron Man. Do you kill him or do you
Hmm.
not? I'm talking when he's usually in Avengers too.
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting conversation. We'll leave that for a moment. I will come back to him because he is a very good character that I don't see getting the respect he deserves. I mean, people obviously like they know he's good, and it's not that like anyone's saying, "Oh, Corset Iron Man's bad," but I don't think it's really talked about how ridiculous that character is. And I think that should be probably plenty of stuff to talk about right now. I wanna make this clear. These are all groupings of characters, absolutely. But what I'm saying about them is not hyper specific, I hope, to the point that you can still see what I'm talking about and like, oh, these guys do lots of damage. These are like big linchpin characters. These are big like blaster characters who just nuke everything in sight. These are the leaders. These are the tanky ones. So you can, these two are a little different because they're very specific characters. But like, I'm hoping you guys can apply this to different characters in the game and just kind of hear the theory of what I'm saying more so than like the specific, character drama I'm talking about. And once I'm done with all these characters, we'll talk a little bit about priority control. But these guys over here. So put Strange at the end of the list because he's probably not in the same bracket as the rest of them. But Corvus, Scarlet Witch, and MODOK are some of the pound for pound heaviest hit in the game. If you're talking like single attack output damage, Corvus is a melee beater who has some of the best math in the game. Scarlet Witch is a ranged blaster who has also really good dice math. It's like a 5 out of 8 on offense, and she has 6 die attacks, so that's really good. And she incinerates people, and she throws size 4, so just a lot of damage there. MODOK throws size 3. He has offensive rerolls. He saps power. He has a multi-hitting attack that can hit multiple people. He has bow, and he has obviously his ridiculous passive where he just doesn't take wild effects ever. So these guys are interesting. They're very similar to the Thanos and Dormammu, where like if they're on that team, they are probably like the primary offensive pressure of the team. So killing them as quickly as possible is a very big deal. Like if someone's bringing a Scarlet Witch or a MODOK and they lose them like turn 2, they probably lose the game. If it's like a battle game, right? Like if we're fighting, if it's we're not able to just score out, getting like spider infected or cubes or something like that. If they lose their big 5 threat blaster very quickly, it's super hard to come back from that because so much of your offensive pressure is just gone. I will say, like we were talking about with Thanos before, if you can avoid it, don't uh, daze Corvus before you can get rid of Thanos, unless you have like all according to plan or something, and you can consistently get rid of Corvus the next round before he gets to go. Because a dazed character, anyone who's flipped, Thanos makes them into a Gatling gun, or whatever, an obsidian chainsaw, blah blah blah, whatever allegory you want to make. But yeah, if it's like if someone's running like Corvus Proxima in Criminal Syndicate, by all means, get that fucker out of here. Just kill him. He's not like Reality Gem reduced by 1 is pretty tanky. 6 health is pretty tanky. But there are definitely like you could do it, right? Like it's not impossible. Corvus, if you focus anyone in this game down, they die pretty quick. So just like the biggest tip I can give for people who struggle against Black Order is just go wide. If you're wider than them and you have characters that can deal damage, just put every attack into Thanos, control them off of points, that type of stuff, and you should be fine. Try and like shift target prioritization around. So like if you have Sacrifice or Heroes for Hire or Escort to Safety, you can make their fewer activations I don't know why this chat thing keeps happening. We're going to try to make this smaller. You can make their less activations because they're going to have fewer characters than you, very much less impactful. Another thing I think is just like underplayed is Scarlet Witch and Ebony Maw have their counterspell cards, their Shush and No More Mutants. That can, like, if you turn off Glaive's Edge, where Corvus counts Blake's, he is really living on a prayer. He's really just hoping to do damage. Reality Gem is great, but it's still just one additional crit at most. It's not going to be like multiple additional crits the way Wanda can boost her dice. So yeah, so if you can get rid of these guys, that's great too. And again, all of this, any character who has a very vital objective or is holding a space that's important should be at the top of your threat list. Like if it's Corvus and Toad, but Toad is holding the objective, you probably want to kill Toad first. If it's all at all possible. Obviously, don't put yourself in a position where Corvus is just going to kill you and take it back. But if you're at 14 points and Toad is holding that like alien ship or whatever, and he's going to win by just running away, you know what you have to do. You got to get rid of Toad.
Right. One question for you. This
Please.
is probably something we didn't think about. Ghostwriter. He's in so many lists these days. You don't want to. I mean, you want to attack him, but you don't because he usually comes with uh, deal with the devil, which can bring him
Right.
back. But I mean, you don't want to attack his allies because now you're powering up. So what do you want to do in his case?
It's a very good question. I don't rate Ghostwriter super highly. The one exception to that rule is in Guardians. I think Ghostwriter in Guardians is legitimately very dangerous because of the rerolls. If it's just Ghostwriter and he's doing like 6 die attacks, it's not the end of the world. But he's a very interestingly designed character in that he really punishes you for attacking. So like Ghostwriter against Web Warriors, they're probably pretty happy with that matchup because they're never going to kill him. They're not going to try. They might daze him with an all-webbed up turn or something just to get him off the board for a round. But his whole thing is he gets power when his friends get hurt, and he can punish you for getting crits and like spiking another character. But Ghostwriter, he presents a very interesting puzzle into the game, where it's like, how do I fight against a Ghostwriter? And the answer is both, killing his cheap revival targets and getting rid of him. But if you try and get rid of him, he'll penance stare you, and he'll probably kill whatever characters that's pointed at. Yeah, Ghostwriter's an
Right.
interesting one. And like you said, he comes with Deal with the Devil. I think, yeah, if you can, like, if you're fighting Midnight Suns and they bring a Ghostwriter, they're probably going to have, like, Blade and, a bunch of other relatively high threat characters. So at that point, I would say you can pretty safely ignore him unless he gets an extract like I was talking about. Because, yes, he's scary if you're fighting him, and yes, he's going to be getting power from you killing his friends. But he doesn't really want to kill like a Blade, right? For his leader, for his card, he doesn't really want to kill like a sorcerer's Doctor Strange for his
Right.
for Deal with the Devil. If they're going Swarm Guardians, that's a bit more of a puzzle, and I think at that point you kind of just have to try and avoid him as much as possible, or force out Deal with the Devil as quickly as possible, like spike him down, which is hard because he has 15 health. Um, yeah, Ghost Rider and Guardians is definitely a puzzle. I think in general though, just like if you know you're gonna have to get into a scrum with a Ghost Rider, do your best to play some kind of control squad, like and just try and outscore as quickly as possible. Because Ghost Rider is not, he has no control on his card. He's pure damage. He's very fast and he can hit pretty hard with Penance Stare. He can hit pretty hard with like winging it rerolls, and he has Incinerate on his card. But for the most part, he is just a beater. He does not have any control effects. He's, like I said, fast, but you know there are ways around that. So yeah, and like I said, all this got to be taken with a grain of salt. If Ghost Rider has the objective, kill Ghost Rider. It doesn't matter if he
Right.
revives or
Yeah.
whatever. Also, fun fact: if Ghost Rider revives with his Deal with the Devil card, and you're playing Black Order into him, you get 2 victory points because he KOs and he KOs the person he revives off of. So if you're playing Black Order, kill that motherfucker, and then kill him again. Um, anyway, so we talked about these guys, talked about leaders, talked about tanky boys who want to hold objectives, talked about the steely people.
We didn't talk about Iron Fist and Luke Cage yet.
I think we did a bit, but I'll gloss over it again. I want to put Enchantress in the steely people box because she deserves to be there. Um, Iron Fist and Luke Cage. So Luke Cage, you don't want to attack him, but he forces you to. There's not too much you can really do about that besides just like positioning well and trying to get them to burn heroes as quickly as possible because he has the reverse bodyguard where you have to be outside of 2 of him. Iron Fist, I see a lot of people just ignoring Iron Fist because they don't want to give him power, and that's not dumb to do. But if you can get like a daze on Iron Fist, you put a like even though he'll have the power to Iron Fist someone, you put a lot of pressure on that character, and after he Iron Fist, you can probably just kill him, and that's that's a model off the table. But he does not have the same kind of like tank potential as Luke Cage. He can't force you to attack him more than once with Heroes for Hire. He's like sponging one attack most of the time. Luke Cage, meanwhile, is like a ridiculous team player. Iron Fist is a really good like solo model. He's a really big, flashy piece. Meanwhile, Luke Cage is like just an exceptional team player, like Gen 4 Swampert or whatever. But yeah, let's get to these three that I pulled out. I think they'll probably be the last specific character we talk about. Iron Man has two ridiculous tactics cards, one being Ricochet Blast and one being Helios. So this 3-threat tanky character, who's just like pretty hard to remove in general, and also sits at range 4 all game, if not range 5, can just sometimes, when he feels like it, nuke the ever-loving hell out of somebody. If you can kill Iron Man, which is not easy to do, because like I said, he's tanky and he's a ranged character, but if you can kill him and get rid of these cards, that's fabulous. If you can kill one of the Captain Americas and get rid of Ricochet, also fabulous. When I'm playing Iron Man and I don't get the chance to either Helios or Ricochet, I don't feel like I wasted 3-threat, but I definitely, did waste a tactics card. That's a slot that I had for a big attack that I'm not going to get to use. And if I don't get to Helios something, like a Dormammu or a Thanos, I don't really have a good way of killing that character on my team. Loki is another character like Ebony Maw and like Scarlet Witch that I think is genuinely underplayed. Loki literally like deletes turn 1 plays. He makes them almost impossible for like most turn 1 plays, because like if you're doing stuff where you steal with Black Cat turn 1, or if you're doing like Thanos Black Order pulling you in twice with a Space Stone, or not Space Stone, with a Cosmic Portal and a Mind Stone, Loki says you can do maybe half of that or none of it at all. He is such a powerful presence on the table. I deleted all the thingies, but like range 4 around a character is a massive bubble. It's like a 16-inch bubble on the table where all your powers just cost more. This isn't that much of a concern into things like Guardians, who don't really have a whole lot of superpowers of note that they're like really worried about spending all the time. But like most of the affiliations in this game, most of the characters in this game, like let's see, Domino is affected by it really harshly. X-23, not super affected by it. Honey Badger, super harshly affected by it. Zemo, super harsh. Thanos, super harsh. Dormammu, super harsh. You get my drift. Like almost every character on this table, like Juggernaut's super tanky, right? Well, when Juggernaut has to pay 2 to reduce damage by 1, he's a pretty sad little man. Loki's insane. And when he flips, he gets even more insane because he hexes everyone around him. Loki is both like a character you really want to focus and get off the table, and a character you can't afford to focus because of how powerful God of Mischief is on his backside. There's like
definitely
genuinely very little counterplay to a well-played Loki. I've played a lot of games with Loki into like Avengers or like Wide Guardians, or not Wide Guardians, but I was playing Wide Guardians with Loki, but like Shadowlands Daredevil in my test games. Loki makes those matchups so much easier because you're just making your opponent like bash their head against a wall. I Am a God and Trickster are both solid defensive options, so even if they do try and hyper-focus him, he's getting 2 power a turn. He's not super easy to take down when he's counting blanks, especially on Mystic, and that's even if he lets you attack him. So Loki's a really, really, really good character that is probably just a wee bit under... he's not the tankiest guy in the world, right? He's still got 3 physical defense, so 3 dodge. He's got 10 health total. But he's a character whose presence cannot be ignored, and if he's on the table, you will have to deal with him in one way or another. Hood is another one where... oh, sorry, go ahead.
Got a question about Loki. When we're referring to Loki, is this Loki without the gem or Loki with gem?
I'm of the opinion that Loki is probably at his best without a gem. The Mind and Space gems are both exceptionally good. And they do make him a lot better. But when your 5-threat character only has 10 health, that's very risky. And it can sometimes bite you in the butt. But when he's just a 4-threat character who's making your opponent's life hell, that feels great. At least that's how I think about it.
Okay,
I've
cool.
definitely played him more without the gems, but I know he is very good with gems. Especially the Space Stone, in my opinion. I think Space Stone makes Loki tremendously scary because he can get to the middle of the board, grab an extract, move back, and then they can't really pull him very far forward, even with Thanos, who's like the best fishhook character in the game. Then going into Hood, I was talking about Mystic defense earlier, how Mystic defense is not super great across the whole game. Well, this guy is Rapid Fire Mystic. It sucks. I hate Hood. Hood's really good. But if you hit him once, he can potentially flip over here. Oh, that's not going to work. He turns into a demon. A tanky demon who does not have Mystic attacks. Well, he still does, but they're expensive. So getting Hood to flip as quickly as possible, because they probably want to try and keep themselves in his normal form, because it has more utility with the heal, as long as possible, is good. If you can get Hood to daze, because then he turns into his demon form, you're sitting pretty. Of course, that does mean he'll probably have the power to use his Dark Lightning and flip right back. But, I mean, that's fine. Then he's spending 4 power on an 8-die attack. It's not the end of the world. It's not great either. Like, 8-die Mystic attacks, woof, do not like. But I would say overall, his injured form is a little bit easier to deal with, has a little bit less utility than his uninjured form. But again, Hood is very good and a very obnoxious character. I'd probably put him... He's not quite with these guys, like the super annoying damage dealers, but there are a lot of games where if I'm running like Black Panther and Steve Rogers and Sam, who don't have defensive tech versus Mystic, I probably want to get Hood off the table as quickly as I can, while still not like going blood red in the eyes and hyper focusing them down. Okay, whew, a lot of talking. One other thing I want to talk about is priority control.
Okay.
So priority is really important. Obviously, it's the ability to like dictate how a turn is going to go for you. It's if you want to if you have a character with an extract, they can run away. If you have someone who needs to get an extract on your and your opponent's holding it, you can try and kill them. Going first, it's priority. It's a big deal. It's like putting your best foot forward. So when you are playing an attrition style team, if you're playing like um, Black Order's probably not a super good example because they have great priority control, but like let's say Tall Brotherhood, for example. If you're playing this at 16, where's Juggernaut? And your opponent is, 4 wide. You kind of have to be careful about killing literally everyone. Because if you daze, one character, great. They only have 3 characters. You're going to have 2 characters after that. You're fine. But if you daze 2 characters on your first go, they suddenly have 2 characters, and they're going to go with one right now, and you have only 2 characters, so you're going to lose priority, and they get to come back with all that power and clap back at you. So, yeah, it can be really fun to just, try and table somebody, and that is a totally viable strategy to do in this game. It does take a very long time, but it's killing off more of the team, giving them less options is obviously a good thing. But you don't always want to go so gung-ho. Like, if you daze a really... Let's put these guys over here. If you're going into, a really wide team, like if they have Domino, they got 23, they got Badger, so that's 8 threat right there. This is
Yeah.
16 over here, so let's grab another 8 threat worth of characters. Panther
That's,
Voodoo, some nice leaderless X-Force. If they have this going on, and you daze 3 people in a turn, you are going to have a really bad next turn because these 3 characters are all going to come back. They're all going to have a ton of power, and they're just going to remove one of your very impactful activations. And then your first turn, say you go with Magneto, or they daze Magneto. Your first turn with Scarlet Witch has to be huge. If you whiff your dice, you're in a really, really, really bad spot because they have a very good opportunity now to take out someone else that hasn't gone, or take out the character that just went. And then you're falling behind. These characters would be flipped in this situation. You're falling behind, and they have more bodies than you. So you have to be really confident in your model's ability to 2v1 at that point, which just isn't realistic all the time, especially with the kind of damage that some of the 3 threats in this game can put out. So that's something that everyone should be mindful of is priority. We always have activated tokens on our characters. We always can do the priority math in our heads. So if you can maintain priority with an attrition squad, it's a good idea. If you can see yourself in the future losing priority and there's no way to avoid it, you're probably going to be in a rough spot. And I think I'm going to leave it with that. I don't really want to go too much deeper than that. I think that's enough information that people can make sense of this. Any
Right.
questions before I call this quits?
Um, no, I see what you're saying, just in terms of priority. That you don't ever want to go too hard into your opponent. But I mean, when you bring an attrition squad, one of the problems is sometimes you have the choice of, okay, do I not make an attack and do I just sit here and do nothing? Like the game really talks a lot about action economy. So when you're not doing anything because you don't want to daze a person, what do you do in that instance? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think like it's it never feels bad to remove two activations off of a table, right? Like if you daze two characters, it never feels bad.
Right.
Um, but then like that clapback can be huge. So like the scariest situation I can think of is you daze two characters and then the other three like take down one person. So then when they come back the next turn, like when they're taking their turn, they're injured and they kill your big model. That's probably the worst case scenario, and that's what you're trying to avoid. So as long as you can avoid that, you're probably okay. Because yes, they'll flip, possibly your whole team, but since you were able to flip people first, that means you're gonna have priority now, and your clapback will probably erase a good chunk of this team. So yes, action economy is very important, and if you're playing an attrition squad, you want to make the most out of your fewer activations, obviously. But attrition in this game does not mean completely ignore objectives and just kill people. It means, in my opinion anyway, is picking, like, if it were this team, the first character I'd be trying to kill is probably either Domino or 23. It's picking a priority target, erasing them from the table, and then picking apart the leftovers one by one. You don't want to try and go gung ho and just fight everything. Like, you don't want to be all attacking different targets. You want to try and pick people off one at a time and focus your overwhelming firepower on single targets, is how I would phrase it.
No, that's good. I like that. That's helpful.
Okay. If you guys can't read, this is my buddy Almaka. Hit him up on Discord. He's a great player. And he'll kick your butt. All right. Thanks for
Thanks a
listening.
lot, man.
This was some talk about character prioritization and priority control. Might do this again. If you care, comment down below what other conversations you want to hear me talk about. All right, bye.